today we're going to be picking back up on First Kings. This is First Kings chapter 21. And if you remember, we've been following the kingship of Ahab. And we see that Ahab is just a bad king. He's just a king that has allowed himself to go completely outside of the things of God. He's worshiping other gods. He married a very evil and corrupt woman by the name of Jezebel. And that name is very prominent in the minds of pretty much everybody. Even if you don't study the Bible, people know that a person that is a Jezebel-like person is a person that is not fun to be around, or evil, or this has all this negative idea behind it. Well, we're going to see some of the reasons why that name Jezebel resonates so prominent with wrong or evil, and we'll look at that on today. All right. We'll look at something that we'll ask this question. In this story, somebody's going to die, and he's going to die because something bad happened, and it was not of his fault. And we're going to ask the question: God knew what was going to happen here. He knew that this man was about to be put to death by the evil workings of Jezebel. And we want to throw out the question of why did God allow this? And is there something that we can pull from this about even when bad things we see happen to people who we know seemingly did not deserve that? Is there anything that we can pull out and analyze about this situation that happens to this guy named Naboth? And maybe we can apply it when we feel that certain things have happened unjustly to either us or someone that we care or love. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the story. It's not that long, but it certainly is a very interesting story, and I think we'll pull a lot out of this. So let's take a listen here. 1 Kings chapter 21. Let's take a listen.
Chapter 21. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab king of Samaria. And Ahab spake unto Naboth, saying,
Give me thy vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house, and I will give thee for it a better vineyard than it. Or, if it seem good to thee, I will give thee the worth of it in money.
And Naboth said to Ahab,
The Lord forbid it me, that I should give the inheritance of my fathers unto thee.
And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he had said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed, and turned away his face, and would eat no bread. But Jezebel his wife came to him, and said unto him,
Why is thy spirit so sad, that thou eatest no bread?
And he said unto her,
Because I spake unto Naboth the Jezreelite, and said unto him, Give me thy vineyard for money, or else if it please thee, I will give thee another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give thee my vineyard.
And Jezebel his wife said unto him,
Dost thou now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise, and eat bread, and let thine heart be merry. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.
So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, and sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters unto the elders and to the nobles that were in his city, dwelling with Naboth. And she wrote in the letters, saying, Proclaim a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people, and set 2 men, sons of Belial, before him, to bear witness against him, saying, Thou didst blaspheme God and the king, and then carry him out and stone him that he may die. And the men of the city, even the elders and the nobles who were the inhabitants in his city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them, and as it was written in the letters which she had sent unto them. They proclaimed a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people. And there came in 2 men, children of Belial, and sat before him. And the men of Belial witnessed against him, even against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying,
Naboth did blaspheme God and the king.
Then they carried him forth out of the city, and stoned him with stones, that he died. Then they sent to Jezebel, saying, Naboth is stoned and is dead. And it came to pass, when Jezebel heard that Naboth was stoned and was dead, that Jezebel said to Ahab,
Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give thee for money. For Naboth is not alive, but dead.
And it came to pass, when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, that Ahab rose up to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, to take possession of it. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying,
Arise, go down to meet Ahab king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, In the place where dogs lick the blood of Naboth shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine.
And Ahab said to Elijah,
Hast thou found me, O mine enemy?
And he answered,
I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring evil upon thee, and will take away thy posterity, and will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel, and will make thine house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nabat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for the provocation wherewith thou hast provoked me to anger, and made Israel to sin. And of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, The dog shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Him that dieth of Ahab in the city the dog shall eat, and him that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat.
But there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, whom Jezebel his wife stirred up. And he did very abominably in following idols, according to all things as did the Amorites, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. And it came to pass, when Ahab heard those words, that he rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his flesh, and fasted, and lay in sackcloth, and went softly. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying,
Seest thou how Ahab humbleth himself before me? Because he humbleth himself before me, I will not bring the evil in his days, but in his son's days will I bring the evil upon his house.
All right. So, as you see here, this is a story that has so many things that we can try to pull and analyze. What's happening here? I mean, why is this going on? A lot of it is very easy to answer. We'll understand, yep, we know exactly why people do certain things. But then we also will ask the question of why does God allow it? Obviously, God knew what was going on, because the moment that this evil happened to Naboth, guess what God did? He sent his prophet, Elijah, to go talk to the person that orchestrated and allowed this evil to happen, and that's the king Ahab. And so we want to kind of look at that, and we'll ask that question when we get to it, as to what's going on as far as how God relates to this situation. And also, you look at this. This is the season that we're in. We're in the season of giving, and what we see here is the worst gift ever given, in my mind. Jezebel gave her husband the gift of Nabal's vineyard. That's the worst devilish gift you could give, because of the way she did it. And it shows you a lot how we have to make sure that we want things, and we enjoy this time. We enjoy of giving and receiving, but it has to be done properly, and it has to be done with the right motive and with the right reasons. And so let's take a look here. And so chapter 21 opens up, and of course it opens up with the word "and," because we're following this line of Ahab. All right, now we've already seen how Ahab and Jezebel, it started off with Jezebel with her prophets, her false prophets, and Elijah called out those false prophets. And we remember that story, I think it was 2 chapters ago, when they had the contest between whose God can really answer by fire. And of course, the gods of Jezebel, all those false prophets of Baal, could not answer. But the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did answer according to the word of Elijah. And then once the false prophets were shown to be false, Elijah had the people gather together, and Elijah killed all the false prophets. Okay, and so of course that brought the ire and the anger of Jezebel, and Jezebel said she's going to make sure that she kills Elijah. Well, we know from the chapter that God protected Elijah. Elijah was very fearful and he was running, but God came and met him and said, "Don't run. I got something for you. You got still some things to do, and don't feel like you're alone, because there are 7,000 other prophets that I have that don't serve the gods of Jezebel." And so with all of that going on, we then get to the point where we see now Nabal, who has been introduced to this story, and he's an individual that just has a piece of land. But the thing is, his land happens to be close to Ahab's land and his area where he does his cooking and everything, and he wants the land for convenience. And this is where this picks up at. So it says here in chapter 21, "And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard, which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab." Hard means it's really close, right next to, a convenient distance from Ahab, from the palace of Ahab in Samaria. All right, verse 2. "And Ahab spake unto Naboth." And so now Ahab, he wants to just make a deal. All right, and he says, and he's saying, "Give me thy vineyard, that I may have it for my garden of herbs." He wants, plant his food, his herbs there, so he can get to it really quick, "because it is near by my house, and I will give thee for it a better vineyard." I'll give you something that's even better than the one you got. This is what Nabal's offer is. A better vineyard than it, or if it seems good unto thee, I will give you the worth of it in money. So Nabal's like, I'll even give you what it's worth. I mean, I'll pay you cash for it. I'll give you, a nice deal if you want to sell it. Now, right there, you don't see anything wrong. Nothing's going on. We do know that Ahab is a wicked individual, and sometimes what you make kind of read into this is, who wants to do business with a person that's evil? And he has a reputation. People know him as a person that does not serve God, and for whatever reason, he's just trying to have this little convenience of being able to plant these herbs. And look at what Naboth said to him in verse 3. "And Naboth said unto Ahab, The Lord forbid me." Now he didn't just say, "I don't want to do it to you." He said, "The Lord." He said, "My whole spirit knows I'm not doing no business with you." All right. And so Naboth said unto Ahab, "The Lord forbid it me, that I should give the inheritance of my father unto you." I'm not giving you something that's been in my family. And from the Mosaic laws, you knew that the land that was given to various individuals was supposed to stay in the family. Even if you did sell it after 70 years, which was the year of Jubilee, the land would revert back. So nobody ever sold land permanently at any time under the Mosaic law. All right. And so even when you sold it based on the price. Well, how many years do you have left until you hit the Jubilee? And that was kind of what would drive the price that you would pay. If it was 50 years before Jubilee, then you would get a better price. If it was only 2 years before the Jubilee, then you would sell it for not that much, because you knew that in 2 years you would give it back to the original owner. That was one way to make sure that nobody ever went completely broke. You would always have something to give to your, even if you had a parent, a father and a mother that made some bad business deals, after 70 years, the land would go back to the family. So the children wouldn't just be broke because of the parents or the grandparents' bad business deals. it's kind of an interesting system if you think about it. Where people would always have something that they would have. You always had an ongoing inheritance. All right, so Naboth, he's like, no, I'm not selling you this. This was in my family, and I'm not going to sell it to you. I don't care. And he's not even considering how close he is to the year of Jubilee. You're just not getting it at all. And verse 3, and Naboth said to Ahab, the Lord forbid me should I give the inheritance of my father. Verse 4, and Ahab came into his house heavy. Now, what does that mean? He was sad. He was pouting. Right? And so he came into the house heavy and displeased because of the word of Nabal, the Jezreelite, had spoken unto him, for he had said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my father. And he laid down upon his bed and turned away his face and would not eat no bread. Now look at this. How spoiled is Ahab? He always wants things to go his way, the way he wants it. And that is one of the reasons why he always seems to serve his own desires, and he does not serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Ahab's problem is Ahab is his own God. And what happens here is now he just realized he can't have what he wants. How do we act when we don't get what we want? This is the way I want something to happen. And the thing is, it seems to make sense. From Ahab's standpoint, it's like, oh, this makes sense. This vineyard is close to my kitchen, close to my house. Why can't, this is something that would be a very nice convenience for me. But some people live in this world of like, everything should be convenient for me. I'm sure we all can recognize or maybe know somebody that, they don't like any difficulties. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to have to, wait. And unfortunately, that's the culture that we're producing. No waiting, no developing, no building, no working hard. I want it right now. Well, that was the mindset of Ahab way back then. And so he's sitting in his bed. He's heavy, the Bible says. He's not looking at anybody. He's only staring at the wall, and he's not eating any food. He's not going to no lunches. He's not going to any of the king's meetings. He's not eating at all. All right, and he's doing this. He's basically throwing a what? A very high class, kingly temper tantrum. Right? I want what I want now. Well, look what happens. Verse 5. But Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said unto him, why is thy spirit so sad? And thou eateth no bread. And Jezebel's like, why are you sitting around moaning and pouting and sitting around here and not eating? What's your problem? This is what Jezebel said. And then verse 6, and he said unto her, because I have spake unto Naboth the Jezreelite, and said unto him, give me thy vineyard for money, or else if it please thee, I will give thee another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give thee my vineyard. So now Naboth tells Jezebel the problem. Now the problem, see, with Ahab is he's just going to be sad about it. Jezebel's not going to be sad. Jezebel is going to get rid of the problem, because she is one of these individuals that she don't have no ethics on. If she wants something like how Ahab wants it, she's not going to take no for an answer. And she's not going to worry about who gets hurt or who gets bothered. And she's going to work out a scheme, work out a plan. Now, think about this. And here's the question. I started the question. I'm going to add another layer to this question. Naboth is just out there doing what he's doing in his own house, in his vineyard. Ahab comes to him with this question, and Ahab gets the answer from Naboth, no, I'm not going to do this business deal with you. Now, Naboth, he's back in his house doing his thing, has probably no idea that Jezebel now is in the picture. His life is on the line by an evil woman, and he has no idea what's going on. Now, the question I will bring out to you is this. God knows what's going on, because God's going to come and deal with this, but God's watching the whole thing. And so the question is, why is God allowing this to happen? He's going to punish Ahab and he's going to punish Jezebel for what they do, but he doesn't stop them from doing it. And it brings out a thing that we should always try to keep in mind. There's a lot of evil and bad things that God allows to happen and doesn't stop for a variety of different reasons that we should make sure we try to understand why. Number one is because we do live in a sinful world. And we always should keep in mind the question that people ask is, well, why does bad things happen to good people? But because of where we live, the question really should be, why does any good thing happen at all? We're in this world that is a sinful world, and in a sinful world, we get good things happening all the time, and that's because of the goodness of God. Let me draw an analogy. You have a situation where you got a planet, but instead of our planet having air and oxygen, you have a planet of fire, say like the sun, right? And you throw all these people into the planet that's like this, that burns like the sun. And if God was to allow these people to go in there, the first thing you would say, well, once they get to this planet that's like the sun, they're all going to burn up. But when they get there, they don't burn up. They don't burn up because God has protected them. So they can walk around on this planet of fire and nothing bad is happening to them. Why? Because the God of goodness is protecting them from the flame and the fire of that planet. You know, this imaginary planet that I'm creating for this analogy. But then if one or two of them step out of the ways of God, or one or two of them happen to have something go just a little bit different, and they then become affected by the fire of the planet and get burned up, you wouldn't be like, oh, why did they catch on fire? Why did it? Well, we knew, because that's the planet they're on. They're on a planet of fire. And so people burning up is what you expect. The protection is not what we expect. So it's kind of crude analogy, but I hope you get the point. This planet that we live in a world of sin. So the fact that we don't get sin happening to us all the time, every day, all day, is only because of the goodness of God. But occasionally, God does allow the effects of the environment that we live in, which is a sinful environment, to take place and to happen, and we get affected by the difficulties of living in a sinful world. Then you say, okay, well, that's fine. Well, Naboth is dying, but how does Naboth, how does he get anything? Well, the scripture tells us to be absent from the body is to be where? Present with the Lord. So you can draw the analogy that God may be saying, and this is my analogy, this is coming from my mindset. You can certainly disagree or have a different idea, but let me throw this out to you. Nabal is an individual that God looks at and says, I'm bringing him home to me. But in order for that to happen, he has to leave his body. And he's choosing, and he's going to allow the death of Nabal. But once he dies, he instantly goes into the spiritual realm to go into what is called Abraham's bosom, or into paradise. Like what Jesus told the thief on the cross, today you will be with me where? In paradise. So you can kind of get into your mind that God is saying, I'm going to let this evil, this stealing and killing that Ahab and Jezebel is going to do, I'm going to allow that to happen to Naboth. And then Naboth will then be in my presence. It's kind of like, when you children are outside playing and the parent says, come on inside. And the child has to go inside. Well, the child's not outside anymore, but he's with the parent. And child may not have wanted to go inside. Maybe he wanted to stay outside and play. But once he comes in, he's in the house with the parent, which is a better place to be than to have to live outside, all night. And so it's just a crude analogy to try to help us to understand that no matter how God chooses to work out these things for people that are trying to serve God, he always works it out for their benefit. Another quick analogy is Joseph, when his brothers lied on him and were going to kill him, and they ended up selling him into slavery. Years went by, and Joseph, because of the works that God had put, the ability that God had given to Joseph, he worked his way up into Egypt to become the second in command. And then when the brothers who tried to, who sold him, came looking for bread, they had to deal with Joseph. And the whole story came about when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, and the brothers were sorrowful for thinking of killing him, selling him off. And then Joseph said to his brothers, don't worry about it. What you did for me, you did it trying to be evil, but God worked it out for good. And so we always have to remember that a lot of times the things that we look at and we go, wow, this was awful. Why did God allow it? And God's ultimate, higher, clearer understanding of what is good ultimately for any and every individual, there are things that we will look at and go, wow, that didn't look like a good thing. That just seems so sad that happened to that individual. And as we read this story, we're like, wow, that's so sad of what happened to Naboth. But keep in mind, God always has his people's best interest in mind. And so when Naboth is put to death, which we'll see here in a minute, he's not leaving the presence of God. And that's how I see it, based on all of the aspects that we've read and we see in Scripture. But let's go through it. I think I explained that enough now. But if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me.
It's the same with Jesus.
And it's the same, as Miss Penny said. You probably can't hear it because she's on the other side. But she said it's the same thing with Jesus, and that's true. All right? The death of Jesus, the suffering, the whipping, the lying, the spitting in his face, the pulling of his beard, nailing him to a cross, brought forth what? Ultimate salvation. So a lot of times bad things happen that look awful in this natural realm, but what it does in the spiritual realm is glorious. And that's sometimes the thing we have to keep in mind. God does not make any mistakes when it comes down to taking care of those who trust in him. Though it seems like a lot of times from the natural world that we live in, is God ever going to do something for this individual? Is God ever going to help this person? Why do people have this? Why do we got homeless? Why do we have orphanages and all this stuff that a lot of times is not seemingly good here in the natural realm? But God doesn't only work in the natural. He ultimately wants your spiritual benefit. And that's something we got to try to keep in mind. All right. I think I said enough on that. Let's move along. So in verse 5, it says, but Jezebel, his wife, came and said unto him, why is thy spirit so sad? And in verse 6, Ahab told him what was going on, how he couldn't get the vineyard. Look at verse 7. And Jezebel, his wife, said unto him, dost thou not govern the kingdom of Israel? Now, Jezebel's right off the bat is saying, you don't recognize your authority and your power. Aren't you the king? Don't you rule here? And so she now goes and operates in a level of kingship. Let me show you what being king in Israel can do for you, and I will get you that vineyard. Look what she says. Are you not govern the kingdom of Israel? Rise and eat bread. In other words, go on and be happy. Feel good. Let thy heart be merry. She's like, don't be sad and don't be hungry. Go on. She's already done got it figured out. And look what she says. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. Now that's Jezebel. She's working as that I'm going to work with the authority and the power I have, and I'm going to give you. The problem is Jezebel is manipulating her authority and her power. But what she doesn't realize is she doesn't have ultimate authority. and she doesn't have ultimate power. But God's going to allow her to do this. Now, you say, well, then we already talked about why God allowed certain things to happen to Naboth, who was a good individual. Why does God allow bad people to succeed in these plans? And the Bible tells us the answer to that, because God spoke to Abraham about when he was going to give the land to Abraham's descendants. And he said, but I'm not going to give it to you yet, because the iniquity of the Amorites has not been fulfilled. In other words, God said, I want them to do all the evil they want to do. I'm allowing all the evil that's in you to come out, so that when you are judged for all the things that you did. Not all the things that God knew was in your heart, but all the things that actually came out of your heart. Because see, God knows our heart. He can judge us based on what's in our heart. But he doesn't. He allows us to act it out. Either act out the good or act out the bad. Then you're judged not because of what God knows, but because of what everybody, other humans, angels, everybody else now can see what you are. God already knows what you are, but he wants witnesses of who you are, and that will be the angels and other spiritual human beings that have lived. And that's why Paul tells us we will judge angels, because we're going to see certain aspects of in the spiritual realm, and God already knows, if they're bad or fallen angels, but he wants a witness to say, yes, we saw what they actually did. God knows who they actually are. And so he already understands it, but he allows it to be played out. And so he's allowing Jezebel to go and do all that's in her heart to do, even though it's evil. And it's
I also think that,
they can't hear you from over there.
I know, but that he's allowing us to see who we are.
Oh, okay. And Miss Penny brings out a good point. He also allows you to see you. Because sometimes you need to know who you are. Sometimes you think, well, I'm not that bad of a person. Then you turn around and do some stuff and you're like, ooh, wow, why did I do that? Or sometimes you think, well, I'm not going to be getting involved in everything. You try to be to yourself, and then things happen. And then next thing you know, you out there helping people, doing things. And then you recognize, yeah, I guess I do care for people. God allows you to see you, as Miss Penny just said. All right. So Jezebel is getting ready to do this. She's telling Ahab, go on and have some fun, man. Eat some bread and be merry. All right. Not just not be sad. Be happy. All right. Look at verse 8. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name. She forged his name. All right. She's writing as though she's the king, and sealed it with his seal. Put his seal upon it. So it looks like it came from Ahab. And who did she do? Unto the elders and to the nobles that are in his city, dwelling with Nabal. So all the people, the elders and the noble people that are high standing, that are in the area of Jezreel where Naboth is, she's writing these letters to these individuals. Now, that must mean that these individuals, for whatever reason, are going to obey what Jezebel says. Maybe they are afraid. They don't want to stand. They don't want to confront her. They don't want to say, I'm not going to do this, Jezebel. This is wrong to do. They're not doing any of that for whatever reason. Or maybe they just as evil as Jezebel. But even if they're not evil, but they don't want to confront the evil, they get this letter, and look what happens. Verse 9. And she wrote in this letter saying, proclaim a fast and set Naboth on high amongst the people. In other words, put him in a prominent place so everybody can see him. So she's orchestrating a ruse here, a little theatrical thing to entrap Naboth. Okay. Verse 10. And set 2 men, sons of Belial. Now, what does that mean? Set 2 people that are thugs, that are crooks, that are criminals, that don't mind stealing and lying and hurting and killing. Find some of them people. Basically, find some people that act like the devil. Set 2 men, sons of Belial, before him to bear witness against him. To do what? To lie. That will lie against him. And what lie are they going to say? Lie, saying, thou hast blasphemed God. Now look, you got people that are lying that they're sons of Baal, sons of the devil, but they're going to accuse another person falsely for blaspheming God. So this is how a lot of religious rackets get born. Get born. You got people that are crooked, that are going to use the fact that you should be serving God and not blaspheming him in an evil way to entrap another person. So you can see how people can use religious stuff wrongly. The devil did that when he tried to tempt Jesus. The devil told Jesus, it is written, cast, the angels will bear thee up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. So he's quoting something from Psalms 91, I think it is. But the devil's using scripture. Now here's Jezebel using the law that's written by Moses that people should not blaspheme the Lord. Don't blaspheme God. And if you do get caught blaspheming God, you're supposed to be stoned. So she's using religious structure to do evil. And a lot of people today use a idea of religion, an idea of the Bible, but they only are trying to do it to get what they want. Now, what does Jezebel want? She wants Nabal's vineyard. I want what you got. And a lot of these religious people that you see on TV, the main thing that they want, they're talking about the law of Moses, just like Jezebel's telling these people to talk about the law of Moses. But the main thing they want your vineyard. They want your money. They want your allegiance. They don't care anything about God, but they put forth this rouge and they're trying to act spiritual. So you got Jezebel and these nobles and these elders and these two thugs, and they're all cahoots in together to try to work out something to steal and kill. All right, look at what happens here. All right, so he says, and set two men of sons of Belial before him, and to bear witness against him, saying, thou didst blaspheme God and the king, and then carry him out and stone him that he may die. Verse 11. And the men of the city, even the elders and the noble who were the inhabitants of the city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them, and as it was written in the letter which she had sent unto them. So they all agreed to carry out this devilish plan. They agreed to do it. And look at verse 12. They proclaimed a fast. Why do you fast? You're fasting under God. They all of a sudden look like they're trying to do something for God. And set Naboth on high among the people. Look like they want to honor Naboth. See, that's what the devil does. He sets you up high so when you get cut down, you fall hard. And so, they once again got it. And Naboth is going through all this. He's going to this dinner. And once again, he don't know what's going on. But God does. And there came in two men, children of Belial, to set before him. And the men of Belial, in other words, that's another way of saying these people that are like the devil, witnessed against him, even against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth did blaspheme God. Oh, these lying men are talking and tell a lie that this man who is innocent has blasphemed God. So they're using religious rules against an individual with a devilish motive. He blasphemed God and the king. Then they carried him forth out of the city. They go from the fast festival. Now they're out into the city, and they do what? And stone him with stones that he died. So they went from this, pretending fasting to a murder. So they lied. There's lying. There's stealing because they want to take his vineyard. And there's murder. All right. So you look at the things that you see here. All of this speaks of the spirit of Satan who is working in Jezebel and in those noble people and in those elders and in those two thugs. And you say, well, my goodness, this is a world that's bad. Yeah, it's a world of sin. And when you're in a world of sin, bad things will happen. Thank God every day that good things happen, because that means God's protection is on you. Everything, we're living in a world of entropy. Things always decay. But the fact that your house hasn't decayed and you were able to be protected from the wind and the rain that happened, you thank God for that, because the devil wants to tear it down. Your car started and you're able to drive in the cold. Thank God for that, because the devil wants it to break and you can freeze on the highway. This is what the devil wants. So anytime you see things that work well, thank God. And when they don't work well, thank God that you know God. And he can bring you through being thrown in the fire. He can bring you through being thrown in the lion's den. He can bring you through whatever aspect of this evil world you have to experience. But he will bring you through. So he will protect you from or bring you through. But either way, we're living in a sinful world, and sin's going to hit you one way or another. And so Naboth now is dead. Look at verse 14. And they sent word to Jezebel saying, Naboth is stoned and he is dead. Verse 15. And it came to pass when Jezebel heard that Naboth was stoned and was dead, that Jezebel said to Ahab, Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth, the Jezreel, which he refused to give thee for money, for Naboth is not alive, but dead. Now, you think the devil has succeeded, got what he wanted. But even when what did Jesus say? If you gain the whole world and lose your soul, what does it profit a man? So yeah, she got the vineyard. She's giving him the vineyard, but it's not going to profit her. It's not going to profit Ahab. The only person that actually profited here, believe it or not, was Naboth, because he went from a world living in a sinful world in the natural to being in the very presence of God. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And that's the thing, we should keep that in mind. Verse 16, and it came to pass when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead. Ahab didn't say, why did you do that to Jezebel? Why did you have that man killed? Ahab didn't say that. Why? Because Ahab is just as bad as she is. That's why he's married to her. Ahab rose up to go down to the vineyard of Nabal, the Jezreelite, to possess it. I will take it because my wife stole it and gave it to me as a present. You don't want, it's the Christmas season. Don't steal gifts to give presents. That don't make no sense. Right? But that's what Jezebel did. Not only did she steal, she murdered. You're going to steal and kill and take stuff to give to somebody else. But that's the nature of the realm in which Satan operates. Verse 17. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite. You see this? Now all of a sudden the narrative opens up and we recognize God was watching all along. He was letting it happen, but he was not ignorant. And we should always remember that. No matter what we do and how we think, okay, I got away with this, or nothing really happened, no thunderbolts, no lightning, strikes happen. Look like, okay, I kind of move. God is still watching. Whether he decides to forgive you or bring the wrath or how it is, he's not ignorant of it. God knows what's happening, and we should always keep that in mind. He knows our very thoughts. Now, whether he wants to reveal it to the rest of the world is totally up to God. There's a lot of things that God knows about you and me that he hasn't revealed to other people. But in this case, he is going to use Elijah to reveal everything that happened. everything that Jezebel did and everything that Ahab allowed to happen, the word of God is going to bring it all out. All right. Verse 18. And he says, arise and go to meet Ahab, king of Israel. God says Ahab is king of Israel. I know your job. I know your responsibility. This is what God's saying. And because of this, the more you have, the more you're going to be responsible for. And when you don't be responsible, the greater your discipline. Arise and meet Ahab, king of Israel. And notice, he didn't send him to Jezebel. He sent him to Ahab. Ahab's the king. He's going to deal with Jezebel. But the word goes to Ahab. But there's a reason why. We'll get to that in just a bit. Which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth. We're going to go right to his stolen property. Right? Whether he has gone down to possess it. Verse 19. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, thus saith the Lord. God has something to say to you, Ahab. Hast thou killed and then taken possession? In other words, you have killed and stolen. You killed and you taken possession. Killed and stolen. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, thus saith the Lord, in the place where the dogs lick the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. You're going to die outside in an area where you will bleed out in an area where dogs will come and lick the blood once your body is taken away. In other words, you're going to have a death that will allow your blood to be spilled. That means you're not going to die of old age. You're not going to die of a sickness. You're going to have some trauma happen to you, and your blood's going to ooze from your body, just like happened when they allowed Naboth to be stoned to death. This is an aspect where the law of Moses says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. God's allowing this to happen because he has removed his mercy. See, the only reason we don't get eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth is because God has given us what? His mercy. And that's why it's important for us to continue to work and to live and to think in the things of God. But let's keep going here. Verse 20. And Ahab said unto Elijah, hast thou found me my enemy? So he's acknowledging that the prophet of God was his enemy, is his enemy. All right. So he said, no, I'm not trying to do the things of God. I know you speak for God, but I don't want to do the things of God. I find that my opposes me. It's my enemy. And he calls it like it is. And he answered, I have found thee because thou hast sold thyself to work evil. You sold yourself to work evil. What does that sound like? You sold yourself to the devil. You sold thyself to work evil in the sight of God, the sight of the Lord. So you forget that even when you do evil, I still see it. He says, you did it in the sight of the Lord. 21. Behold, I will bring evil upon thee and will take away thy prosperity. In other words, your lineage, your descendants, your children and grandchildren will end. They will be cut off. And he says, and will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall. That's a Jewish idiom for saying all the males. Anyone that pisses against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. So all of your descendants, the males, will all die. So you won't have any posterity going forth because of this. 22. And will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam. Now, if you remember, God was disappointed with Jeroboam and told him the same thing. You're not going to have any male descendants to follow to keep your name. Basically, your name will be what? Cut off. All right. And so he says, just like how I did to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baashiah, the son of Ahijah. All right, these were two people that we studied previously, and we saw what happened to them. And what God is saying is the same thing, that the same judgment that they got is going to be the same judgment that you're going to get. Okay, he said, for the provocation wherewith thou hast provoked me to anger, you allowed me to remove all of the mercy and the grace that I could apply to you, but God allowed it to be removed. Now, once again, when God's grace and mercy is removed, what do you have? You have no protection from the sins of this world. Like the analogy I gave of the planet of fire. When God's grace and mercy protects you from the fire, when it's removed, you now have the effects of the planet. And so when God's grace and mercy is removed from Ahab, he's now going to have to deal with the effects of living in a sinful world. We don't ever want God's grace and mercy removed from us. Now, if God chooses to do it, he does that, not because his grace and mercy is removed. It's because he escalates or pushes forward the ultimate. And what's the ultimate? It's appointed unto to everyone once to die. So sometimes he will allow death to happen to allow you to enter into his presence immediately. Right? And once again, there's a whole lot. I can spend an hour going through, all the different people that were considered martyrs for God. But let's just move along, and we'll talk more about that as we continue in other stories, especially when we get to the book of Daniel, where we will actually deal with the Hebrew boys being thrown in the fire and Daniel being thrown in the lion's den. We'll elaborate a little bit more upon that. All right. And then he says in verse 23, and of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, the dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Now, didn't say the dogs are going to lick up her blood. Like she bled out and then, no. The dogs will eat her. That's the natural outcome of what's going to happen to Jezebel. She's going to become dog food. Okay. 24. And him that dieth of Ahab in the city shall the dogs eat. Now, and if anybody that is alive of your sons or grandsons that dies in the city, the dogs will also eat them. That's what's going to happen to your children, your sons and grandsons. And he that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat. So anybody that is, any males that you have, sons or grandsons that die in the fields, shall the fowls, or in other words, the vultures, will eat them. 25. But there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, whom Jezebel his wife stirred up. Now, that I highlighted that entire verse because you look at what this says. After he gets his pronouncement, now there is a description of Ahab, of who he is. There was none like unto him. Nobody was like this guy selling out to evil. Look what it said. That did sell himself to work wickedness. I will sell everything I got to do as much evil as I can. And then it says, and he did it in the sight of the Lord. Now what that means is Ahab is not ignorant of God. Remember, Ahab was around when the contest between Elijah and the prophets of Baal. Ahab saw that the Lord was God. And when Ahab in the previous chapter was fighting a battle, Elijah, these prophets came and told Ahab that you were going to win the battle. And Ahab got a word from God. So Ahab knows about God, knows the power. That's why it says he did wickedness in the sight. He knows God and chose wickedness. That's a devilish mindset. The devils and the demons know who God is, and they tremble, but they don't serve him. You got a lot of people that know about God, but I don't want to serve God. Why? I want to serve myself. So I'm going to read this one more time, then we're going to move along. I want you just to really get and see. Look, verse 25. But there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself. He sold his soul to work wickedness in the sight, in the very presence of the Lord. And then it says, whom Jezebel, his wife, stirred up. Plus, he had a wife that was even more conniving than him, that encouraged all of his wickedness and added to his wickedness. I tell you, it's an important thing to marry somebody that can help you serve God. Be careful. You don't want people around you that will help you serve the devil or the world or even yourself. Any one of those can turn out to be a false god. All right. 26. And he did very abominable in following idols. What's idols? False gods. All right. The devil, the world, anything. Baal, Ashtoreth, groves, according to all things, as did the Amorites, whom the Lord hath cast out before the children of Israel. Like I stated before, when God told Abraham, I'm going to give you the land, but not right now, because the iniquity of the Amorites is not full. But when they had done all the evil that they could, it took them 400 years to do it, then God said, okay, I'm going to cast y'all out and bring in the children of Israel. And he's comparing Ahab to the Amorites. He acted just like them, but they were the reason why they got thrown out and why Israel was able to move into this land. Verse 27. Now, watch this. And it came to pass, when Ahab heard those words, when he recognized what Elijah said unto him, all right, he heard it. And that's the thing. The thing to underline in that particular phrase is heard. He that has an ear to hear, do what? Let him hear. It says, it came to pass when Ahab heard those words, that he rent his clothes, put on sackcloth upon his flesh. Now, this is how sad he was when he couldn't get Naboth's vineyard. But now he's being sad because he's recognizing how much of an evil, devilish person he is, and how much of an evil, devilish person the woman he married is. And now he is really feeling like this is awful. Now he's feeling sad for a correct reason. Being sad because you can't have something that somebody else has is not the way, not a reason to be sad. It's not a reason to be in sackcloth and fasting. But to recognize that you are a sinful person before God is a reason to have a sadness and feeling like you need to do what? Repent, to come to God, to ask for forgiveness. Ahab is doing this. Let me read 27 again. And it came to pass when Ahab heard those words, that he rent his clothes, put on sackcloth upon his flesh, fasted, and laid in sackcloth, and went softly. In other words, he became soft, walking softly, or moved around softly, meaning he was humbling himself.
Timid.
All right. Verse 28. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, 29, seest thou how Ahab humbleth himself before me? So now God sees this too. All right. He's humbled himself before me. All right. He says, I will not bring the evil in his day, but his son's day will I bring the evil upon his house. So what God is saying is, I'm going to allow Ahab to die first before he sees his children and grandchildren being eaten up by dogs. I'm not going to allow him to see it. Now, you then ask the question, and I throw this out there, did Ahab repent? Is this another situation like what Jesus did on the cross? when that thief on the cross, and remember, he was called a what? A thief. And he's admitted, yeah, we did this stuff. We're up on the cross being put to death because we deserve it. And then he turned to Jesus and said, remember me when you come into thy kingdom. Is this another situation where Ahab in the later part of his life recognized, I'm an evil guy. I'm awful. And he begins to repent and to tell God he's sorry. And that's something that we can think about. I personally think that the mercy and the grace of God is above that which we can even understand or find out. Now somebody says, but then if he's evil, that means he never got a chance to really be judged for his evil. Well, none of us want to be judged for our evil, whether our evil is big or small. Right? If you die in a fire, I mean, you can die in a fire in a car. A car is kind of small. Or you could die in a fire in a mansion. A mansion, that's a big fire. People can see that for miles. It don't matter which fire you die in, a small fire or a big fire. You still burn to death. And so if you got sin, small sin or little sin, you still have eternal death. So no matter how big or small the sin is, can God forgive big sin just like he forgives little sin? And from my perspective on how I read the Bible, the scripture doesn't answer that question for us. But I would say from my perspective on how I read the Bible that yes, God can do it. He can forgive big sin just like he can forgive little sin. Right? Because sin is sin. And so I wonder in eternity, like we will see the thief on the cross, will we see Ahab? Will he be there? Will he be in eternity connected to the eternal blessings of God, not the eternal condemnation? And that's something that I will leave you with there. All right, as you can see, very intriguing chapter. A lot of stuff in here that you can ponder. But we're going to bring this to a close. And if the Lord allows, we'll pick up on what's going to happen to Ahab. Because we're not done with him. He is going to die. But we're going to see how this happens. And we'll get a little bit more on the ending of his life, if the Lord says the same, when we study our next chapter on next Sunday. Any other comments or questions on what we talked about today?